My name is Fraser Simons, and today I'm going to be talking about The Dream Life of Sukhanov by Olga Grushin. This is a novel that is not translated. It is written by the actual author herself, though I think it might have been published in Russian back when she was there, and might have been like a dissertation or a finishing to an MFA program or something like that. But this version that I have, which I think is the earliest English version, is a 2005 publishing in English, so hopefully that information is correct. It seems like it's almost like gonna be a modern classic, possibly in American literature, possibly, but I think it's a little bit muddled, but I think it's also being considered a modern classic in Russia, and that might have been what gave it the boost to have interest in getting it published over here in English. But anyway, the titular character, Sukhanov, is a 50-something-year-old bureaucrat who is in charge of a art program, the state-sponsored art program. So these are like things that the communist government, which is when this takes place in Moscow, so the 70s, I believe, something like that. These are the approved works that are not anti-capitalistic and just in keeping with the ideals and values of the Russian people, basically, or the Russian government as they see the people. And we go into the life of Sukhanov because he goes to an art show with his wife and his children, and when he leaves, he's confronted with a friend who is an artist as well, which Sukhanov seems to have given up for his position. But this friend of his that he's no longer in contact with is having a gallery opening of his own show, and it's obviously not approved by the government. It would be seditious works, basically, or not approved anyway. And this sort of oddly puts Sukhanov in a spiral, and as we read, we figure out why that is. So the interesting thing about this book is that every time that Sukhanov has a dream, it actually is, well, it at least usually is a memory that is resurfacing, and sometimes it'll be in contrast to something that he has been talking about with his wife or another person, and it sort of like elucidates or at least is put into contrast with what he has said, what we assume that he believes as we're following him in the narration. And so we have this like weird dichotomy of what he says versus his memories, and we also get to learn his backstory and what's happened to him and whatnot. I think to explain the book I need to give a tiny bit away, which is essentially something pivotal about this book that you learn fairly early on, is that Sukhanov has had to compromise his ideals and his ideology, even the things that he has espoused previously to be integral to his identity in the past, specifically when he was courting his wife. And he's put into a position where he has to choose between his wife, possibly his life, and these ideals, or to stick to them and probably lose everything. And we learn that he has made the choice, obviously, because he's a 50-something-year-old bureaucrat, and all the memories that he is experiencing, why they're contrasting what we learn in the fiction, is because he has sort of tampered with his persona, tampered with his identity, and so far as his memories, as to what happened as a function of dealing with the trauma of that experience in the past. And it's to the point where he doesn't even realize it. And what ends up happening is all this repressed stuff that he's not dealing with comes out in his dreams, and then they suddenly start merging with reality. So the dream life of Sukhanov becomes his waking life as well. And so the major theme is obviously that he is not dealing with his issues, and so they come out when they're not bidden. He has to deal with them regardless, and as a number of sort of flashpoints happen in the narrative, he continues to have these flashbacks and these surfacings of dreams, and it becomes more and more surrealistic. And you actually learn a lot about the surrealistic movement, which was very interesting. I know Salvador Dali somewhat, but I wasn't really familiar with the actual movement. And this is very, well, maybe not very, but it was pretty granular when it was going into this stuff. I found it interesting. It's something to note for you if you know that you don't want very granular details into this, into the art scene, into surrealism, into Salvatore Dali and stuff like that. This book might not be for you, but at least it's very thematically appropriate to what the book is exploring. It's very smart. It's very interesting. It's sort of like Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind in a way. Like, it's that surrealistic, it's that weird, but it's also that tightly thematic and written and interesting, and particularly critiquing the Soviet government back at that time, what they would do, how they perceive the arts, how they would use it as propaganda, what they liked and disliked. So you get a whole bunch of information about the regime at the time too. So it really is just a fascinating book. I highly recommend it. I gave it 4 stars purely because I didn't jibe too much with the actual voice. It felt, I tend to go for more descriptive writing, and while this felt like descriptive writing, it was almost by way of Hemingway-esque prose. So it was very like short declarative sentences and not stilted, but it just has like a very specific cadence, and it's something that you get used to as you read, but something that like if you don't click with it, you just don't click with the author in that way. So it wasn't going to be a 5-star book for me, but I think if you did click with the prose, there's a lot to offer here that is compelling, so it could be an easy 5-star read for some people. And it is a I tried to be as spoiler free as possible, but it's a very there's very interesting things that it has to say about the human condition, about suffering, about trauma, about how people use memory, how they unconsciously are biased towards it, motivational thinking, how people are coerced, what they're able to perceive in other people just from the tailoring of their own senses, in some ways just to kind of be like self-preserving who they are and being guarded and paranoid in that in the Soviet regime, and what that sort of like baggage or loss of agency, how it affected everybody and what it did to specific people and how they react to other people is very very well done in this book, and then multifaceted, because as soon as the dream life starts merging with the waking life, you get a whole bunch more detail about these people. So when you first experience them without the dream life, you're put into a position where you're asking yourself, why are these people like that? And then further on, when a memory surfaces or the dream life takes over, then you get that knowledge. So it's very interesting. It's almost like a 1-2 punch narrative most times when you meet a character and then discover who and what they are to Sukhanov. And it left me thinking about a lot of things. It did its job very effectively. And like I said, it could be a very easy 5-star read for some people out there. Anyway, that'll do it for me. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next video, hopefully.